Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy weekend to you. Josh's severe weather, Saturday the 13th. And fortunately, yesterday's severe weather outbreak did not unfold the way it looked like it might a few days before. We underachieved, and I'm quite okay with that. Now our attention shifts to a major change in the weather pattern. We're not really going to be talking about severe weather for a while. We're heading kind of towards a midpoint of meteorological winter, and winter weather it is finally for those of us here in the South, especially but Great Lakes, Northeast, interior of the West, all going to be dealing with wintry precipitation, travel troubles here, and some significant amounts of snow for many of us, and ice farther south as well. So I'm going to break down what we're looking at, and honestly, not just one potential winter threat, but two here coming for parts of the South and the Ohio Valley and the East Coast next week into next weekend. A lot of details that we still have to iron out on this, but the pattern's starting to take shape here where it's pretty clear we're no longer going to be stressing about severe weather, about rain snow lines, more talking about amounts of snow. Farther south, ice going to be a concern as well. And you've heard me talk about the extreme cold. That has not changed. I don't think it's ever going to change here in the next week or so. We're still dealing with some brutal cold coming in here behind our major blizzard that's across the Great Lakes and heading into Canada here over the next couple of days. So this is what we're tracking. The first storm is going to kind of be a swing and a miss. It looks like for New England, it's going to be close to the East Coast here Tuesday night and Wednesday, but some suppression in the latest model trends, meaning a lesser amounts of potential snow coming for the Northeast. We haven't canceled the storm, but that's the trend. That will come in kind of two pieces. The first piece dives out of the Rockies here into the South Central states later Sunday into early Monday. And you see this area of white I've got highlighted here for Monday into Tuesday. That is the area that is likely to see a very significant amount of snowfall. Those of you in the Ohio River Valley, southern Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois get missed to the south pretty much from this one. Too cold to snow, I guess, might be the term. You'll see some light snow, but you're not going to see a significant snowfall. On the southern side of this, as that cold air cuts underneath the moisture that's going to be along the Gulf Coast, we do have the threat for freezing rain, some sleet, kind of a mixed bag of precipitation. I don't think it's a heavy ice storm, but certainly one we need to watch because any kind of threat of ice could cause an issue here. And that may last into early Tuesday morning. So some of you in the South could be dealing with a 4-day weekend if you have Monday off, that is. The next storm, number two here, looks to take a track a little bit farther to the north and west. And that one on the models shows us a little bit better potential of a more substantial snowfall for the time being here across parts of the Northeast. That can still shift. And if that shifts more to the west, we're talking about a wintry mix or even rain for the big cities of the East Coast. But again, that is a week away, so things are going to probably change on the models, and I expect we're going to see some drama here. And my goal right now is to kind of just go with the average of what I see, kind of give you the trends at this point. I've been in this business for over 20 years, not tooting my own horn, but I've seen a lot of things shift. I mean, we saw that just with the severe weather last couple of days. So anyway, we're definitely going to be in for a pretty active week of winter weather. If you look at the infrared satellite, you see our big storm here affecting New England and Atlantic Canada, and the wraparound with it, bringing some substantial wind and snow with it to the upper Midwest. At this point, the heaviest of the snow is winding down, except in the lake favored areas. This is actually when you guys see your biggest amounts of snow. Even as the storm departs, we've got the cold air pouring in over lakes that are still above freezing, and we're going to be dealing with just some really nasty weather. But it's going to be more of a what we call a mesoscale event over kind of a medium or smaller scale than, say, a synoptic event, which affects a lot more people. The next storm, though, is taking shape here. You see it moving into coastal Oregon. We're going to have a winter storm for Western Oregon, Northern Oregon, and that is going to move across and follow the cold air into the Rockies and into the Southern Plains here later this weekend into next week. You see the greens and yellows here across Montana and Alberta and Idaho. These skies are clear. This is just the infrared picking up on extreme amounts of cold. Cold cloud tops, 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit below zero is what you're typically picking up in here. Those are surface temperatures, 40 to 50 degrees below zero in some cases. So we are talking about the coldest air mass by far of the season, some of the coldest air in place across all of the world here, bottled up in Western Canada. You can see on the Weather Service map, we have a very colorful outlook here. This doesn't even include the extreme cold the harsh wind, cold advisories that are in place here. But we see right now our blizzard still affecting portions of Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, upper Michigan. These are blizzard warnings. And for the most part, the snow rates have already kind of wound down, but we're still dealing with extreme wind and cold, producing very difficult travel. Now, I expect these will slowly get lifted as the day wears on, but we will continue to have winter storm warnings in pink here across areas downwind of Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. We have winter storm warnings in effect from Oregon and the Sierra Nevada over into western Colorado, and an ice storm warning over west central Oregon, flash flood watch over northern Cal and southwest Oregon. Not that I ignore the West Coast, I just know most of my audience is coming in from the central and eastern US. So I will certainly talk about what's going on the West Coast. And feel free to leave me a comment if you want to see more. I'm happy to talk about it. I did a lot of forecasting out west over the years here. In the east, we have a flash flood watch still in effect this morning over the coastal portions of New England, down into the Delmarva and Chesapeake region. And we're just dealing with continued wind and coastal flooding here this morning that has been brutal for those of us on the East Coast. It's really been a nasty winter on the East Coast, not from a snow perspective, but from a wind and flooding perspective. We do have winter storm warnings for western and upstate New York with the lake effect bands expected this weekend. We have still a winter weather advisory in effect for portions of northern New England with our storm leaving here this morning. And we have high wind watches and warnings from Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee right on up into Vermont and eastern parts of Canada. You see this big area in blue here from eastern Oklahoma into the entire volunteer state and southwestern Virginia. This is a winter storm watch. It actually gets down into the Mississippi Delta region. This is our next storm, the one I've started talking about. And we do have a substantial snow coming here, our biggest one in a couple of winters. And I'm going to break that down for you guys here in just a little bit. Here's a look at our forecast radar from the NAM model today into tonight. You can see our storm leaving the east here. This is around 8 o'clock tonight. We still have bands of snow impacting the Midwest and especially around the Great Lakes. But here comes our next storm system. Focus on this one here. It is going to spread across the Rockies overnight tonight, and we're going to see an area of light snow breaking out later tomorrow in the southern plains, especially eastern Oklahoma and the Ozarks region here. As we get through tomorrow night, there's going to be some moisture that gets wrung out here across parts of Texas and southeast Oklahoma and the Arklatex. And the cold air has already arrived. So this moisture is going to go up and over a cold air mass and allow what's falling to refreeze. You see these orange colors in here. That indicates sleet. Pink indicates freezing rain. And the NAM model, I'm not going to hold any punches or pull any punches here, but the NAM model can sometimes suck when it comes to predicting exact precipitation types. So kind of expect a mix here. We could certainly see snow in North Texas, but even though it is showing sleet, Central Texas more likely to see freezing rain. But this is going to kind of take its time to fall here across the western Gulf states as we get into Monday morning. We'll see heavier snowfall rates over Tennessee. I personally think this snow and sleet line that we're seeing here near Memphis is going to end up farther south. I don't think the NAM model does a great job in handling it. But of course, I can only predict it. I can't actually do it. So that could shift. And I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And then after we get past lunchtime Monday, we see a substantial amount of winter precipitation from East Texas through the northern half of Louisiana and extending up into eastern Kentucky and Tennessee, western Virginia, West Virginia, and likely along the Ohio River. We are going to see some snow in here as well, although albeit a lighter amount of snow. This is just the NAM model. Now here's a look at our official snow forecast here from this storm into Sunday night. Around the Great Lakes, 1 to 2 feet, a lot of pink here indicating the potential for over 8 inches. Highest amounts will be just west of Marquette, Michigan, where 2 feet is possible. Also near and south of Buffalo, we could have an enhanced band of lake effect here that brings some very intense amounts of snow coming to Buffalo, along with strong wind. And that is going to potentially come into play here for the playoff game in Buffalo here, actually Orchard Park, on Sunday. We also see substantial amounts of snow upstate in New York. And I know it's clipping Maine off, but we're going to see some snow in the mountains here as well. We already are seeing that snow. If you're in Ohio, we do have the potential around Ashtabula, the far northeastern tip, to see some of this band. Same goes for Erie, PA. But right now, the orientation is a little more along the lake, right on up to the northeastern tip of it here in Buffalo proper. Not going to be a repeat of Christmas 2022, but it is going to be a major snowfall event. The wind's going to be a little bit lighter by about 20 miles per hour, and that makes a big difference. And the snow amounts are going to be lighter as well, due to the fact that this is only going to be about a 1 to 1.5 day event. Looking into New England and southeastern Canada here, we do see the potential for 6 to 12 inches of snow in the higher peaks, mainly north of the St. Lawrence, the potential to see over a foot of snow. So we're talking about 25, 30 centimeters. New Brunswick seeing a little bit of snow out of this as well, but the cold air is kind of leaving for the time being and then returning here later on in the weekend. Here's a closer look at Western New York here. 18 to 24 inches is the official forecast. The worst of it's going to be south of the Thruway, right around the airport, and getting closer to Orchard Park, but more the south, the immediate southern suburbs versus the south towns here. But this could shift, and we could see it eventually ending up tomorrow or tonight down in here. So right now, showing the worst of the snow this afternoon around Orchard Park, where our game's going to be held, and then shifting a bit farther south towards places like Boston, New York here later this evening, then shifting back north into Buffalo proper here by morning tomorrow, when the most intense snow could be falling in places like Amherst, New York, and Akron. And then as we get into later tomorrow morning, we may see these rates coming down a little bit. Now, this could still shift, but this is the official forecast. So that is your Buffalo forecast. The rest of you from everywhere else, you're getting blasted with cold. Wind chills 50 to 60 below here in Montana, 20 to 30 below in Kansas City for the big game on Sunday. Just brutal cold. It's not going to be as extreme when you get into Florida, but it will be chilly in Florida and wet as well. But the Carolinas get in on the coldest air of the season. Texas will be in the freezer here. Even Northern California is going to be pretty cold. And the interior of the Northwest will just be bone chilling here. We see a severe amount of winter weather across the interior of the West here, with the cold coupled with the snow. And then our attention shifts here into the Mid-South and the Deep South as we get into Monday and Tuesday. There's a 70% greater chance of a plowable snowfall, or at least 2 inches here. Arkansas, Tennessee, northern Mississippi, far northwest Alabama, southeast Kentucky, Western Virginia into Western Virginia. And unfortunately, we have to use the I word here, a decent chance of at least 1/10 of an inch of ice over portions of central and east Texas, northern and central Louisiana, and western Mississippi, and maybe getting up into Alabama as well. So if you want to pause this and read it, go ahead. I have to move on here in the interest of time. Here is a look at tracking our storms here this weekend. Massive vortex here spinning through the James Bay region this weekend. Here comes our next storm system. And we're dealing with some challenges on the East Coast. A couple days ago, the models showed this vortex and this southern branch feature merging and phasing into a bigger system that could bring substantial snow into maybe the interior Northeast, and then yesterday even for the coastal Northeast. Today we're seeing some shifting in that. Surprise, surprise. So we may not be dealing with a big storm on the East Coast. We may have some winter weather, but we may not be dealing with a crushing storm here on Tuesday. Sorry to say for those of you that were hoping for that, but we do have a possibility of seeing something else here. Now, as we get into later next week, there's going to be another feature that drops down, and this one will be farther south and east, running into more of a block that's building here across Quebec and across Greenland here Friday night and Saturday. And that block gives us more of an opportunity to see something coming up near the south, or near the New England and Long Island and New Jersey coastline on Saturday. So this will probably change, but when we see a ridge here that's centered over the Rocky Mountains and we see this trough in place over the east, we can certainly say that there will be a better shot at seeing a winter storm moving up the East Coast, or exiting but clipping the East Coast on the way out. And again, I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but when I see this ridge in place here over the Rockies, I do know that that is going to favor a better chance of seeing a winter storm on the East Coast. Here's a look at the GFS model, and then I'm going to show you some comparisons. Our big storm is still cranking up here, and then we see our southern feature storm, big high here, bringing cold air. You can see how these isobars drop south and east, bringing the cold air all the way down into Texas. It drills it all the way down into deep South Texas. Moisture picks up. We kind of have two features over the Gulf early next week, kind of two pieces to this storm. The first one brings some rain into Florida here later Monday and Monday night, and then moves kind of parallel to the Carolinas early Tuesday. This is not favored to bring substantial moisture into the eastern United States, the Carolinas and Virginia. In fact, the way that it's tracking, it kind of leaves, it swings and a miss. But there's a second piece behind it that we need to watch later Monday night into Tuesday, which this particular model, the GFS, shows a little bit of wintry precipitation getting all the way down to the Interstate 10 corridor here on Tuesday. And that one has a better chance as it comes up to bring the cold air and the moisture down with it. The Appalachians typically cut down on the moisture east of them. They kind of limit the cold air. And what ends up happening is the cold air doesn't catch up with the moisture. And so lately we haven't seen big storms over the coastal Carolinas and Virginia. However, the position of this low gives us at least some hope that that could happen here Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night, and Wednesday morning. But versus what we saw yesterday, see this feature here in the Great Lakes, it is more progressive, and what it's doing is suppressing what's coming up the East Coast, meaning at this time, we don't see a favorable shot at a winter storm affecting the Northeast. There'll be some snow, but there's not a major storm. Now, shifting to the next system here, we see a more favorable position here because we've got this high over Quebec and a big vortex spinning up here. And what that's going to do is draw low pressure a little bit closer to the coast on Friday. And the position of this is 6 or 7 days away. So it's going to shift some in the next couple of days. But this could bring us a more substantial snow to parts of the Midwest and the Northeast. I don't know yet the exact detail of it, but this is Friday night, and this brings us a more favorable shot of something happening. And it keeps the warm air offshore here, more importantly. The GFS is not in line with every model, as I'm going to show you. The Canadians farther west with this, meaning we have some mixing challenges to talk about on Long Island, southern New England, and New Jersey. But the cold air is there. The big question mark is where's the low going to be? And if it's closer to the coast, then we may see this heavier snow across the interior of the Northeast again. But if it's where the GFS is putting it right now, which I'd be shocked if it stayed this way here for 6 more days, this could certainly be a substantial storm for the Northeast Friday night into next Saturday. So that's what we're going to be watching for you guys here. Here's the cold coming on the GFS. We've talked about this. It's centered over the deep south here on Tuesday. It's advancing eastward Wednesday and Thursday. While not as extreme for New England and certainly not for Florida, it is cold enough here to support winter weather. Florida's not participating in it. It will be cooler. Instead of 80s, maybe we're looking at 60s and 70s. It will be wet. And unfortunately, with El Nino, you guys know in Florida, this is going to be a pretty rough winter here for us. We're not going to see the brutal cold as much as we have to deal with the rain and maybe some flooding and severe weather. Next weekend, still very darn cold here across the central and eastern U.S., but there is a thaw coming into the west as we see a shift in the pattern. And next, the following week, I should say, we do start warming back up in places that are right now 50 degrees below average, could be 10, 20, even 15 or 25 degrees above average for at least about a 5 or 6 day stretch. So this is through the 25th, and we have a milder than average week. And we saw this as well right after Christmas back in 2022. If you guys remember that extreme cold that knocked out power here in the Carolinas and other places, it followed with a warm spell for New Year's. That is very common to see, by the way, where we go from an extreme period of cold into a milder pattern. However, what I am going to say here is this is just a pause in the cold weather. And as we get towards the beginning of February, I do see another shot of cold coming down. Here's the cold right now in the west. I'm going to move through this very quickly. Feel free to pause if you want to see these forecast temperatures in the west. They're brutal. This is Monday, this is Tuesday, and then the worst of it shifts away for Wednesday and Thursday. It's still cold, but not as extreme. And then next weekend, we see near to above average temperatures. So if you want to head to Phoenix next Saturday, 72 degrees the high, I will certainly take it. California, 60s and 70s as well in some places. Here's the central U.S. This is where the cold is on the move here. We see Texas dropping from 60 in Dallas today down to 20 at morning and not getting above freezing tomorrow afternoon in Dallas. The cold gets all the way down to Houston. We're in the 40s tomorrow afternoon and evening, and we see it continuing to drill southward, stuck in the 30s, it looks like, for Monday, except right along the Gulf Coast. Just a brutal attack of cold coming. And nothing that's going to be record breaking for everybody, but it will be bone chilling nonetheless here. Looking farther into the week, we still see waves of cold coming down. This period of very cold weather is going to last at least a week, maybe 10 days before moderating temperatures get here. You can see next week, though, some recovery expected later in the week. And on the East Coast, we're seeing this cold air returning here very quickly to the Northeast. Obviously, very cold across the upper Midwest, especially where that snow's on the ground. We're looking at 10 to 20 below zero in parts of Iowa, northern Illinois, and Missouri here the next couple of nights. That's just brutal. We still see some warm air across Florida and along the immediate southeast coast, but that gets wiped out when we get into Tuesday here. Although, interestingly, the GFS does show 60 degrees here in Charleston on Tuesday. So the cold air has not yet arrived until this next push gets in here Tuesday night and Wednesday. And Wednesday's temperatures in Charleston could struggle to get past 40 degrees. So it's coming. As we look later into the week, we don't see enough mild air to ruin this chance of winter weather on the GFS. We see below freezing for everybody except Cape Cod and the islands, but you're still going to be close enough. And New England's going to be very cold next weekend as well. We see sub-zero temperatures as well. Here's a look at winter precipitation. I'm going a little long today. I hope you guys are okay with that. There's just no short way to look at 2 storms, a winter outbreak, and, well, 3 storms, really. There's just no short way to do it. But here's a look at what's coming here. This is Sunday night. And then we see kind of a piece of energy comes out of the Rockies and enhances our precipitation rates on Monday morning. Snow falling from northeast Texas into Mississippi, and then it lets up here by the evening. We do see the threat for some wintry precipitation as we're hovering near freezing Monday night down to Lafayette, Louisiana, St. Francisville over to Macomb, Mississippi. And this is Tuesday morning, and we could see it getting close to Lake Pontchartrain here, unfortunately. And that could cause a 4-day weekend for some of you down south here. That moves away. Then here comes our next feature. It looks a little bit weaker. It's kind of a late bloomer compared to what we're dealing with. But this one has more of a chance of bringing ice to areas that are getting snow, places like Memphis, Tennessee, and Tupelo, Mississippi, and maybe more of a snowfall for the Ohio River Valley than the first one. Here's a comparison of the models here. This is the GFS. This is how much snow is expected to fall, probably seeing less accumulation than what's being depicted here. 8-9 inches over central and southern Arkansas, northwest Mississippi. Probably about 80% of that actually sticks and accumulates, but still that's going to be substantial for you. Taking a look here at the Icon model, it's got a little bit of a different position for the heaviest snow. It still has snow for the exact same places. The NAM here does not have as much snow farther south. As I showed you before, it's got more sleet in this area and more freezing rain. And I don't know if that's going to be right. So right now I'm kind of ruling out this model, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. This is one of the Canadian models, kind of the Canadian NAM. Here's the European. And it is going gangbusters here in northwest Mississippi with 10 or 11 inches of potential snow. That would be pretty historic for this area, and I think it's probably a little too extreme. And here's the Canadian model, but still showing that band of 7, 8, 9 inches of accumulating snow. So that is the deep south, looking at the Ohio Valley and the Tennessee valleys and the Western Carolinas here. Monday morning, we definitely have substantial snow falling across this area. It doesn't get to Birmingham and Atlanta, but it does make it into Western North Carolina, even Asheville by later Monday. But it kind of hits a wall where once we get closer to Interstate 85, nothing's really going to fall. There's just not enough moisture in place. Kind of advances up into the west here, more along the I-81 corridor versus 85. So places like Raleigh and Greensboro may miss out on this first wave. But here comes the second wave right up the southeast coast, and colder air arrives. So we could see a bit of a wintry mix or a winter storm in places like Greensboro, Charlotte, and Raleigh. It doesn't look substantial at this point, but the GFS is giving us a little bit more hope at this time for Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. So could be an interesting Wednesday with potential school closings in places that aren't used to this snow. Now, as we get later into the week, we do see our next system right now taking a more favorable track to produce some snow into the Ohio River Valley, into Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and of course the mountains here. And I'm going to show you the mid-Atlantic region here. And then that follows with a wave of very cold air here next weekend. Here is a comparison of the models. Snow here for this next storm coming through. Southeastern Tennessee, the Smokies here have a good chance of seeing over 6 inches. West Virginia has a good chance of seeing it in the mountains. Western Maryland here, even southwestern Virginia and places like Johnson City and Kingsport and Bristol have a decent shot at seeing some accumulation. elevational areas could see a lot more. Some places here in the valley might see a lot less, but we even see the potential for something sneaking into Virginia and northwest North Carolina east of the mountains here by the time we get into Tuesday and Tuesday night. This is the GFS. The Icon German model doesn't show quite as much escaping east of the mountains, but it has a big snow over Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. A huge shift from the other models here. Remember, though, the European said this is a Mississippi, Alabama, southern Tennessee storm, but it does bring that snow up into parts of West Virginia, Western Maryland, and getting close to the triad, Piedmont triad here. The Canadian model pretty much agrees as well with the European here. And back to the GFS. Here's the chances for ice, and there will be some differences here. This is the GFS, keeps it south of Interstate 20. This is the NAM, has it farther west across central Texas. I think this is overdone in places like Round Rock, Austin, and San Antonio, but I do think we see a little bit of freezing drizzle and light freezing rain. Here's a blend of the models. It's probably not going to be right, but it takes the average of everything. You see East Texas, northern and central Louisiana, central Mississippi, even over to places like Tuscaloosa and Birmingham have the threat for some ice. Here's one of the Canadian models. Here's the European model. This, I think, is going to be overdone, but we'll have to see here. But again, we're 3 days away, and we just don't see a lot of agreement on the exact placement of where this freezing rain and sleet will end up falling. With the NAM being farther north. Here's a Canadian model. This is actually a good average between all the other models, and it may end up being the most accurate, but the Canadian model does tend to overpredict amounts of frozen precipitation. We saw that with last year's winter storm, so keep that in mind as well. Finally, let's take a look at the Ohio Valley Northeast. We have our departing storm, lake effect snow here, then a break coming on Monday. Here comes our next storm Monday night, and light snow potential into places like DC, central and northern Virginia, the Delmarva here. This is not going to be a big one, and it should be out by Tuesday morning. So I don't think we're going to have anything more than maybe a delay in schools in this region on Tuesday morning. But here comes the next piece. And again, kind of a swing and miss for the Northeast. This has shifted farther south and east and says we just aren't going to see a big I-95 storm because of that suppression. But there is hope here for the next feature that comes in on Friday. And this looks more substantial for Indiana, Ohio, Western and Central PA, eventually the I-95 corridor. And this low pressure is in a favorable spot for us to see substantial snow Friday night, first thing next Saturday. But use caution, as this model is predicting a feature that has not entered the U.S. It's still in the Pacific. And until it gets kind of more within range here in a few days, this will probably change. But I'm going to show it to you because we got to have something to talk about, and we definitely are tracking it for you guys here. But this second feature does have the potential to produce a few inches of snow in places north of Raleigh, maybe Rocky Mount, Roanoke Rapids, Richmond, Baltimore, and DC have a potential to see a little bit of snow here and into South Jersey. This is the GFS model. The Icon is still holding on to that potential that we see the storm not be suppressed and bring some more snow to I-95. This is an outlier. The European, it's not in line with the GFS. It's less promising down in here, but it's showing kind of a swing and a miss here. The Canadian does still show, though, the potential to see a few inches of snow falling here across this corridor of the Northeast. So we'll have to see on the Canadian, and back to the GFS, which says it's a little bit farther south. Here's the Ohio Valley GFS. Icon, totally different. European, more in line with the GFS. Canadian, back to the GFS. So yeah, we're going to see some lighter snowfall places like Indianapolis over to Akron, but likely we're not seeing the big one from this one. Now here's the next system. This is looking at Friday into Saturday, and the GFS obviously has a pretty substantial snow for the Northeast and southern New England. Looking at the European, it does not. It has some snow, but it's kind of a swing and a miss. It actually has the better chance back in Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia and Western Maryland. And then the Canadian actually has some warm air getting involved to coastal sections, and it shows kind of a repeat of a last weekend storm where we have the heaviest snow over the interior Northeast and over parts of Western Massachusetts and Vermont. But it does not rip you off in Pittsburgh or Morgantown. It actually gives you some decent snow as well. So a lot coming here. Don't want to ignore the Gulf Coast, but we've got substantial rain coming to South Florida this weekend, 1 to maybe 2 inches in some places. And then the next wave moves through the rest of Central and South Florida here Tuesday into Wednesday. and more coming here over the weekend. So we have some flood threat across Florida here. This rain is needed, of course, in Southwest Florida. Southeast Florida, it's showing less. That is promising. And the Gulf Coast region does have the potential to see some significant rain as well. I'm just smiling because when I get through a video, I call it a successful day. I hope you all have a successful day. I really appreciate your time today. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm back on Monday morning. I'm taking tomorrow off. And as always, I encourage you to subscribe if you haven't become a subscriber yet. It helps me reach more folks and share this pertinent information with everybody, this meteorological breakdown and speculation of what's to come. I give all the glory to God. He is the reason I do this every day. I lean on him to help drive me to success here. I think we all have a calling. We've all been created, no matter what you choose to believe. And I respect your beliefs, by the way. These are just mine. But I do feel like I need to share them because everybody's got purpose and passion. Everybody's got a reason behind what they do. My reason is to please God and to bless other people. Revelation 21 says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people. And God himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. For the former things are passed away. And he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. And he said unto me, It is done. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him, and that is a thirst of the fountain of the water of the life freely. And the reason I choose to follow God and to please him and to believe that Jesus is our Savior is this very passage from Revelation. And that is Jesus is coming again, that the heaven is there for us. And it is already done for us. All we have to do is make the choice to accept it, to share it with other folks. And there'll be no more pain, no more sorrow when that time comes. We all go through difficult times today. We are all struggling. I really encourage you to go to God in prayer, but also if you feel comfortable, to have me pray for you and to have others pray for you, because in my opinion, in my personal belief, because it is already done, because there's no more death and sorrow awaiting us in heaven, that we just need to turn it all over to God and say, look, God, we can't do this ourselves anymore. We're struggling, but you can bring us the power that has already been given to us to be no longer in pain and to be saved and to be cleaned and cleansed of all of the difficult times we've been through. So I would love to pray for you no matter what you're going through. I wanted to spend a little extra time today just sharing that with you all. I will not stand down in my faith. I will accept people no matter what they believe. Please know that I love everybody because for 30 years of my life, I was not a believer. I was not a Christian. And I truly believe God has given me this gift to share with you all. I know he's blessed you all in many ways as well. And I really, really pray that you guys have a safe weekend. Catch up with you Monday. God bless you.